It's amazing how just by getting on an airplane, you can end up in a completely different world. We left the Bay Area and landed in Istanbul, a city which straddles Europe and Asia. We'd been in Turkey in 1998 and were ready to return. The Rast Hotel is in the heart of the Sultanate, the historic center of Istanbul. We dropped our bags and walked 3 blocks to stand in the park between the ancient Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque. We returned to the Rast Hotel. We had chosen it because of the fabulous view from the dining room. We could see the 2 giant buildings along the skyline of Istanbul. Breakfast was served on a buffet overlooking the Sultanate, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You could clearly see the Strait of the Bosporus, which divides the old from new Istanbul. After a stop in an automatic teller machine, we were on our way to the Basilica Cistern. Istanbul was Constantinople and established in 324 by Constantine the Great as the new eastern capital of the Roman Empire. Romans knew how to build massive cities, and Constantinople was no exception. Giant cisterns were built underground to hold the enormous amount of water needed for the city. One of these, built in 532, is now open as an attraction, and it contains interesting artifacts. The builders used materials from an old temple to erect this holding tank. The cathedral-sized cistern is an underground chamber capable of holding 21 million gallons of water. The ceiling is supported by a forest of 336 reused marble columns. The basis of 2 columns use blocks carved with the visage of Medusa and her snake hair. The origin of the 2 Medusa heads is unknown. Now drained with raised walkway, it's an eerie experience. We walk past a restaurant showing handmade luncheon offerings. 2 women rolled dough and made fresh Turkish flatbread. A young man demonstrated his abilities at a loom, also in a window open onto the street. We headed down to find an art gallery next to Topkopi Palace. The gallery was still there, although not in much better shape. Our son Jay had been with us on that trip, and he had found this very cool gallery. After the art gallery, we walked down to the Bosporus to cross the Galata Bridge, linking European to Asian Istanbul, and to the new city and its Galata Tower. top of the bridge is a roadway for cars, trains, fishermen, and pedestrians. The lower deck of the Galata Bridge has shops and restaurants. The Bosphorus Strait and its strategic significance was the main reason Emperor Constantine the Great selected this place for his new capital of Constantinople in 324. It remained a Christian stronghold until 1453, when it was conquered by the Muslim Ottoman Turkish Empire. At the top of New Town, Istanbul, is Taksim Square. Taksim, considered the heart of modern Istanbul, is the location of the Monument of the Republic, which commemorates the foundation of the Republic of Turkey in 1923. The central figure is Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the George Washington of Turkey. He transformed Turkey into a modern secular country. Taksim Square is an important venue for political rallies as well as football and holiday celebrations.
Istanbul was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Been a long time gone, old Constantinople still is Turkish delight on a moonlight night.
Every gal in Constantinople lives in Istanbul, not Constantinople.
So if you've a date in Constantinople, she'll be waiting in Istanbul.
Even old New York was once New Amsterdam. Why they changed it, I can't say. People just liked it better that way.
Take me back to Constantinople.
Oh, no, you can't go back to Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Why did Constantinople get the word?
That's nobody's business but the Turks. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Been a long time gone, old Constantinople.
Still it's Turkish delight on a moonlight night.
Every every gal in Constantinople lives in Istanbul, not Constantinople.
So if you were dating Constantinople, she'll be waiting in Istanbul.
Even old New York was once New Amsterdam. Why they changed it, I can't say.
People just liked it better that way.
How won't you take me back to Constantinople?
No, you can't go back to Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Why did Constantinople get the work?
That's nobody's business but the Turks.
Nobody's business but the Turks.
The Orient Express was the name of a long-distance passenger train service from London through Paris to Istanbul beginning in 1883. In 1977, the Orient Express stopped serving Istanbul. The last routes of the train ran until 2009. Pera Palace Hotel served passengers of the Orient Express from when it first opened its doors in 1892. This iconic hotel, listed in the book 1,000 Places to See Before You Die, has played host to an impressive list of guests that include Agatha Christie, Ernest Hemingway, and Alfred Hitchcock, among others. We had a drink in the Orient Bar and shared the experience as other visitors serenaded us at the piano.
Geçer mi? Yolum zaman geçer mi? Yolum zaman. Sensiz bu yaylalarda yolum zaman geçer mi? Yolum zaman geçer mi? Yolum zaman. Sen çıkmazsan yaylaya dağlar çiçek açar mı? Dağlar çiçek açar mı? Dağlar çiçek açar. Sen çıkmazsan yaylaya dağlar çiçek açar mı? Dağlar çiçek açar mı? Dağlar çiçek açar.
The Galata Tower was the city's tallest structure when it was completed by the occupying Genoese in 1348. There's a restaurant and cafe on its upper floors, which command a magnificent view of Istanbul and the Bosporus.
Oldu mu olmadı?
We returned from the new town to the Sultanate and our Rast Hotel. We'd made a dinner reservation for the Basilica Cistern restaurant where we had eaten in 1998. The Sarnik is next to the Hagia Sophia in the shadow of its minaret. This cistern holds no water. Instead, it's been turned into an eatery. We dined on Turkish lamb and vegetables.
After breakfast, we walked down to a side gate of Topkopi Palace. Our destination was the Archeological Museum, founded in 1869 and designed by the same architect as the Pera Palace Hotel, where we had been the day before. The Archeological Museum is located in the outer gardens of Topkopi. The facade of the building was inspired by the Alexander Sarcophagus and Sarcophagus of the Mourning Women, both housed inside the museum. The Alexander Sarcophagus is the main event in the museum. Its majesty is difficult to ignore. The sarcophagus was uncovered in 1877 on the coast of modern-day Lebanon. Archaeologists have dated the piece to 320 BCE. It does not belong to the legendary conqueror Alexander the Great, rather probably a Babylonian king. It serves as one of the few contemporary depictions of Alexander, who himself died in 323 BCE. These carvings depict Alexander's Macedonians at war with the Persians. Alexander's horse rears fiercely, driving toward battle. The horse tramples a fallen soldier while Alexander fights a Persian with a spear in his hand, now lost. This sarcophagus at floor level is nearly complete, intimate equal of the Parthenon marbles. Buried in a similar manner to the Egyptian tombs, this marvelous box waited underground for its exciting discovery. It's jarring to us who are used to seeing ancient marble in its pristine white to comprehend that they were originally polychrome. The sarcophagus of the Mourning Women also sits in the dimly lit room. These two pieces serve as a fascinating contrast of ancient masculinity and femininity. While men fight battles, the women mourn their dead and honor them with a funeral procession. The two sarcophagi are similar in shape and size, but carved very differently. Where the Alexander sarcophagus is busy with action, the Mourning Women are static. Found in the same cemetery, the peace and solemnity of the Mourning Women sarcophagus serves as a contrast to its neighbor. Across the museum courtyard filled with old marble fragments stands the Topkopi Tiled Pavilion. It was built just 20 years after the Turks conquered Constantinople. Completed in 1472 by the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed, it was a pleasure palace or a kiosk. The decorative tiles used throughout the building, as well as the ceramic collection displayed within, make the name Tiled Pavilion obvious. The Turks have been masters of the art of tile making and creating beautiful ceramics for centuries. Islamic restrictions against making images of people have created the opportunity to perfect the art of calligraphy and other flowing interpretations. They are geniuses at colored ceramic glazes. The pavilion holds excellent examples of the beautiful, vibrant work that continues to make Turkey famous. wandered into a side garden of Topkopi Palace. The springtime tulip beds reflected the ceramic tulips in the museum collection. The tulip is believed to have been cultivated in Turkey as early as the year 1000. First seen by Europeans in Istanbul in 1556, the tulip, imported to the Netherlands, set off the craze that resulted 100 years later in the Dutch tulip mania. As we left the Topkopi grounds, it started to drizzle. Time to duck into an outdoor cafe. We sat underneath an umbrella and chose food from a universal menu containing the pictures of the food on offer with their prices in euros. We weren't exactly sure what we ordered, so this gave us an ample opportunity to feel like tourists. Then we walked back toward our hotel. We noticed a cemetery just down the street and wanted to see what it contained. It turned out to be a mausoleum for sultans, statesmen, and their families. This is where the reforming poet Sultan Mahmud II is entombed. His reforms include a decree for European-style clothing. This calligraphy is his stylized signature. In this building, above ground, Mahmud, other sultans, and their families lie together in their tombs. We must admit we know very little about the many sultans of Turkey and their kin found there, and the graveyard just outside. Our education has sadly usually focused on Western civilization.
Mehabbet aşiyanımdı, ona sadık kalar gönlüm. Deniz tek çağlayar her dem, deniz tek çağlayar her dem, bulutlar tek dolar gönlüm.
We checked out of the Rast and took a cab to the Crown Plaza to connect with the tour we had booked for the rest of our trip to Turkey and then on to Greece. We were joining up with the group and the guides at the plaza. We checked in for the night in anticipation of meeting everyone.
Me, Rana, is the Turkish guide, and the pre-trippers they already know her. But let me introduce you, Rana. Rana? Hello. Okay, Rana is here. She's going to show us the beauty of this city, the monuments, the history. This is a melting pot of civilizations. It is a unique city.
Günaydın, good morning everybody. My name is Rana. I will be guiding you today and tomorrow as well in Ephesus. So we'll be together for a couple of days.
We pulled up to Topkopi Palace and walked through the Imperial Gate and then onto the Gate of Salutation. Topkopi Palace was the primary residence of the Ottoman sultans for approximately 400 of their 624-year reign. Construction began in 1459 by order of Sultan Mehmed, the conqueror of Constantinople. The palace complex, which sits next to the Bosporus, consists of 4 main courtyards, mosques, a hospital, bakeries, and a mint. At its peak, the palace was home to as many as 4,000 people. As well as a royal residence, the palace was a setting for state occasions and royal entertainments. The sultans held court in the opulent receiving rooms. The imperial harem, composed of the wives, female slaves, eunuchs, female relatives, and the sultan's concubines, occupied a secluded portion of the Ottoman imperial household. It included more than 400 rooms of the private apartments at Topkopi Palace. The harem played an important social function within the Ottoman court and demonstrated considerable political authority in Ottoman affairs. In 1856, the court moved to a new European-style palace in the city. Following the end of the Ottoman Empire and the beginning of the Republic in 1923, Topkopi Palace was transformed by government decree into a museum. It's now a major tourist attraction and contains important holy relics of the Muslim world, including Muhammad's cloak and sword. Next, we walk to the Hagia Sophia. Built in 537 as a Christian church, the majestic and ancient building remained the world's largest cathedral for nearly 1,000 years. Hagia Sophia was converted to a mosque in 1453 after the Ottoman conquest. The bells, altar, icons, and other Christian items were removed. The mosaics depicting Jesus, Mary, the saints, and angels were plastered over or eliminated. Islamic features and 4 minarets were added. It remained a mosque until 1931. After removing the plaster covering the mosaics and other alterations, Hagia Sophia, or Holy Wisdom, was reopened in 1935 as a museum by the Republic of Turkey. 8 huge black discs are Arabic with the names of Allah, Muhammad, Islam's first 4 caliphs, and Muhammad's 2 grandsons. The 9th century runic inscription made by a Viking was discovered in 1964 on a parapet on the top floor of Hagia Sophia. The Varangian Guard, primarily Scandinavians, served from the 9th to the 14th centuries in Constantinople as royal personal bodyguards. Halfdan may have been a bored Viking standing guard when he scratched his name into the marble. We had seen the ruins in 1998 with our son, and we were pleased to revisit them. During the late Roman Empire, the art of mosaic reached its peak. Sculpture was completely abandoned. It was too associated with the ancient gods and with a way of life that was regarded as sinful by the church. The exquisite marriage of Christian and Islamic art and architecture make the Hagia Sophia a dramatic and unforgettable experience. Back outside, we found ourselves in the garden, which separates the pink Hagia Sophia from the gray-colored Blue Mosque. We'd free time from our tour to get some lunch. We couldn't decide whether to shop, people watch, or eat. We walked around the garden for a bit and then finally settled on the restaurant famous for meatballs. After lunch, we joined our group to tour the Sultan Ahmet Mosque, known as the Blue Mosque, because of the blue tiles on the walls of its interior. The mosque, built from 1609 to 1616, has one main dome, 8 secondary domes, and 6 minarets. When the number of minarets was revealed, the Sultan was criticized for being presumptuous, since this was the same number as the mosque in Mecca. He overcame this problem by ordering a 7th minaret to be built at the Mecca Mosque. The design is a culmination of centuries of Ottoman mosque development and incorporates some elements of the neighboring Hagia Sophia with traditional Islamic architecture and is considered to be the last great mosque of the classical period. More than 20,000 tiles were made under the supervision of its Isnik tile master. 200 stained glass windows with intricate designs admit natural light today, assisted by chandeliers.
سيدي يا رسول الله يا خير خلق الله يا نبي الرحمة يا رسول الله.
After an unsuccessful 17th century war with Persia, Sultan Ahmed I decided to build his big new mosque to calm God. The Blue Mosque was built on a site replacing the old palace and near the old hippodrome, a place of big symbolic meaning. Stones from the old buildings were used to build the new mosque.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah.
The call to prayer, or Adhan, is sung in Arabic in Turkey. Between 1932 and 1950, the Adhan was sung in Turkish, but then in 1950 reverted to Arabic when the government declared it to be the official liturgical language.
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
As ritual purification precedes all prayers, mosques often have ablution fountains or other facilities for washing in their courtyards. The desire for cleanliness extends to the prayer halls where shoes are not allowed to be worn anywhere other than in the cloakroom. Thus, foyers with shelves to put shoes and racks to hold coats are commonplace among mosques. The Hippodrome was a circus that was the sporting and social center of Constantinople. The word hippodrome comes from the Greek hippos, horse, and dromos, path or way. Horse racing and chariot racing were popular pastimes in the ancient world, and hippodromes were common features of Greek and Roman cities. Theodosius the Great in 390 brought an obelisk from Egypt and erected it inside the racing track. Carved from pink granite, it was originally erected at the Temple of Karnak in Luxor in Egypt during the reign of Thutmose III about 1490 BCE. Theodosius had the obelisk cut into 3 pieces and brought to Constantinople. The top section survives, and it stands today where Theodosius placed it, on a marble pedestal. The obelisk has survived nearly 3,500 years in astonishingly good condition. The Serpentine Column is an ancient bronze, originally located in Delphi in Greece, and moved here by Constantine in 324. The Greeks had formed the bronze to commemorate the defeat of the Persians under Xerxes in 479 BCE. That war included the famous Battle of the 300 at Thermopylae. The bronze, which originally had 3 heads, was made from captured Persian weapons and is highly venerated. The Grand Bazaar is one of the oldest and largest covered markets in the world. It was completed in 1461, shortly after the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople. Originally, it was just for trading textiles. According to an 1890 survey, the bazaar had over 4,000 active shops, 19 fountains, 1 Turkish bath, 1 mosque, and a mausoleum. Today, it has 61 covered streets and over 3,000 shops, which attract over 500,000 visitors daily. We're not sure of all the items for sale now, but it's a bewildering array of things. We were looking for something flat and unbreakable, as we had to carry our purchases in our bags for the next 3 weeks.
We checked out of the plaza to catch an early flight to Izmir, in ancient times called Smyrna. Izmir was the closest airport to our destination, the city of Ephesus. On our agenda were two very different sets of ruins to tour that day.
Uçağımızda 8 adet çıkış vardır. Size en yakın çıkış bu arkamızda da olabilir. Şu anda kabin ekibimiz tarafından gösterilmektedir. Bunların ikisi önde, dördü ortada kanat üstünde, ikisi arkada yer alır. Acil çıkış ışıkları çıkışları bulmanıza yardımcı olacak. Can yelekleriniz koltuğunuzun altında yer alır. Talimat verildiğinde yeleğinizi gösterilen şekilde başınızdan rica, kemeri belinize göre ayarlayarak
So Izmir is, as you see here on the map, this morning we flew from Istanbul to Izmir. Izmir is our third largest city of Turkey. Ankara is capital city. Istanbul is the most densely populated city, 14 million there. When you look at the terrain and the landscape of these fields, they're not going to be different than what you see in Greece, full of olive trees, orchards, and lots of fruits, starting from cherries, peaches. A lot of peaches grow in this region. 30% of Turkish cotton comes from here. You know, in Turkey we all smoke like a chimney, and that's why it all grows here. Some citrus fruits also grow here, and animal husbandry of sheep and goats mainly. There's a lot of goat production of cheese. Turks like cheese a lot for breakfast, and olives, and they're all cultivated in this area mainly.
The Roman Emperor Justinian and Queen Theodora, who also built the Hagia Sophia, ordered the building of this Basilica of St. John. It was completed in 565. It's near the city of Ephesus. In ruins, it stands over the believed burial site of John, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus. John was also called the Evangelist, meaning one who wrote a gospel. He is the suspected author of 5 books of the canon of the New Testament of the Bible, the Gospel of John, the 3 epistles, and the book of Revelation. Except for Revelation, these are believed to have been written near this place between the years 85 and 100. The Basilica of St. John was one of the largest and most ornate basilicas in the world until it was razed by Tamerlane's Mongols in 1402. It is written that John is the only disciple who was present at the crucifixion of Jesus. He traveled from Jerusalem to the city of Ephesus, bringing the Christian faith. At some point, he was sent into exile to the Greek isle of Patmos by a Roman emperor. There he is thought to have written, in the year 96, in a cave, the final book of the New Testament, Revelation. John was pardoned by a subsequent emperor. He returned to Ephesus, where he lived the remainder of his days. He was the only apostle who was not martyred and died of old age. Marked by 4 columns, where the altar once stood, is the site of John's tomb. John's relics were removed in the 1200s, and the tomb has remained empty ever since. The baptistry has a pool at the center of the cross-shaped plan. The candidates for the baptism descended, and subsequently ascended, from the pool by 3 steps on each end, forming the head and the base of a cross.
وسعوا أبوابكم وارتفعي أيتها الأبواب الدهرية فيدخل ملك المجد. Hallelujah.
Just below the Basilica of St. John sits the Blue Mosque, completed in 1375. Storks now nest in its minaret. The lone, sad, remaining column of the Greek temple of Artemis can also be seen. It was dedicated to the goddess also known as Diana. Artemis was the Great Mother, goddess of hunting. Goths destroyed her beautiful temple in 262. All that stands now is the lone column, the remains of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the first Greek temple to be built of marble. We went on the obligatory rug presentation. This time it was at a marvelous resort with a large garden. We ate a lunch of very fresh and delicious Turkish products.
Of this short demonstration will be providing you with some proper information about the handicraft, and also we're aiming to seduce you with our so please be careful. All right, so we're going to walk this way out.
Some succumbed to the seduction of the Oriental rug, while others managed to resist the brilliant patterns and fine weaving of the ladies of the loom.
From the upper gate and walk down to the lower gate and exit from the lower gate. If you decide to leave the group, it's too hot, too tiring for you, want to go do your own thing, please let us know so we won't look for you, because there are a lot of day tours come to Ephesus and it's very difficult to find you.
This is the entrance all the way to the left.
Ephesus contains the largest collection of Roman ruins in the eastern Mediterranean. Only a small amount have been excavated. The ruins give some idea of the city's original splendor. Herodotus assigned the city's mythological foundation to Ephos, queen of the Amazons. Once a thriving city, its importance as a commercial center declined as the harbor slowly silted up. The area around Ephesus turned into a swamp. Mosquitoes increased more and more. A series of malaria epidemics decimated the population, and the Ephesians finally abandoned the city. The first Christian community in Ephesus was developed around the year 53 by the Apostle Paul, also known as Saul of Tarsus. It was in Ephesus that Paul wrote his first letter to the Corinthians, including, "Faith, hope, love, abide these three, but the greatest of these is love." Paul stayed in the city for about 3.5 years. He also wrote his letters to the Ephesians, most probably here in Ephesus. Paul preached the Christian faith in the synagogues and then everywhere in the city. He gained followers, and ultimately the Christian church of Ephesus became the head of the 7 churches in Western Asia Minor. The 2 apostles, Paul and John, both came to Ephesus, but were not there at the same time. John came about 35 years after Paul. The library is the most recognizable building in Ephesus. The ancient facade has been carefully reconstructed from original materials. The library was built during the reign of Emperor Hadrian in about the year 120. Once there were nearly 120,000 scrolls in its cupboards. Ephesus was the 3rd richest library in ancient times, after Alexandria and Pergamum. The statues in the niches are copies of the originals. They represent wisdom, knowledge, intelligence, and valor. Designed with the building facing east, the reading rooms could make use of the morning light. The interior of the library and all of its scrolls were destroyed by a fire in a devastating earthquake that struck the city in 262. Only the facade survived. The subsequent unhealthy conditions actually preserved the structure, since no one wanted to come and haul away the stones. A massive restoration took place during the 1960s. The facade was rebuilt and now serves as a prime example of Roman public architecture. On the Marble Road, on the way to the theater, there are drawings believed to be an advertisement for a brothel. It's known as the first advertisement in history. There's a footprint showing the way to a female brothel represented by the face of a woman. Another splendid structure in the ancient city is the Great Theater. Located on the slope of a hill opposite the street to the old, now silted-up harbor, and easily seen when entering from the south entrance to Ephesus. It was first constructed in the 3rd century BCE. Then, during the Roman period, it was enlarged and took the style that's seen today. but without its back curtain wall. The 25,000-seat theater was not only used for concerts and plays, but for religious and political and philosophical discussions, and for gladiator fights and animal fights. Seen from a distance, it's truly magnificent. This was our final attraction before leaving for the port of Kusadasi to board our ship and depart from extraordinary Turkey.